Hello guys, welcome to the Unreal Engine 4 live stream, live from the Cary Epic offices. I'm Ray Davis.
I'm Mike Fricker.
I'm the general manager for Unreal Engine 4. I don't know, what do you do here, Mike?
I'm a technical director on the engine team, so I've basically been working on UE4 since its very beginnings and trying to help do everything that we can to get to this awesome launch that we had a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I've been at Epic off and on. I'm back as of about 8 months ago. I was here in the early days for Unreal Engine 3. Got to work on some cool stuff like Gears of War. You may have heard of that one. I'm responsible for at least all the bad parts of Kismet.
That's right. Ray wrote the initial Kismet version for UE3. And you were lead programmer on Gears?
Yeah, I was lead programmer on Gears 1, Gears 2. Actually, when I joined a long time ago, I joined as a junior programmer. I remember when I was getting started out in the game industry, working at Epic was sort of this unattainable thing, and talking to Tim Sweeney was like the scariest thing I could imagine. And now he's actually, you can't see him, but he's in the office with us right now. So yeah. But yeah, today we wanted to talk about a few things, kind of recap on the launch. We have some cool new stuff coming. Uh-oh. Yeah, we wanted to talk about some upcoming things here in a couple weeks, and actually some stuff that we posted real recently. And then we have a nice open session about community questions. We've got a good list, and we've got the live stream here, so if you guys want to spam us, feel free.
Yeah, we can see what you're writing.
Yes.
Cool. So I guess we start up talking about kind of GDC and the launch.
Yeah.
I guess, so we were lucky enough to attend GDC, and we had an unusually large booth there, which was kind of new for us, and some demo pod stations set up. And we timed the launch such that people found out about it right before we headed to the expo floor and suited up to kind of man demo stations and, kind of participate with a conference and attendees and students that showed up on the show floor to check out what was going on. So it was pretty cool because we got to see the firsthand reaction from people who had, not even realized that this product was going to exist.
Yeah, honestly, it was a bit nerve-wracking. We didn't quite know what to expect. It was our first real public booth. We've always had the kind of closed thing in the back before, but this time is like, clearly we want to be out there in the middle of the floor. And we weren't sure, like, after the announcement, was there going to be a ghost town or were people going to be excited? But fortunately, yeah, it was awesome. There was just a constant stream of people. It was a mix of people who had never even heard of Unreal before, and then other, like, grandmasters were showing us cool stuff. And there was a couple guys that walked up to our demo stations and started clicking away, and they knew it better than I did.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
So yeah, it was very cool to see. And yeah, in case it wasn't obvious, $19 a month, anybody can, and many have already. It's really been really cool, the positive response we've seen.
Yeah, I think that business model is pretty cool. I mean, it took us a while to find the right way to release this. We've wanted to release this for so long, and we've been working on it. As many of you might know, that we had what's called a codename Rocket beta program last year, and we'd been testing it with community members. And I mean, what actually got released looks quite different from that, but yeah, just seeing that transition from this sort of active beta program to how we get this product out to you guys, like, it was pretty exciting to watch that whole transition.
Yeah, and I would say, the inspiration for a lot of us, I know, especially me personally, is just we're really excited about the engine and the tools and the opportunity to finally find a way to get it out there to everybody who wants to use it and play around. And also with this new model, with the source code being out there, it's even better. Like, now we can work on it together, right? We have some ideas. We're building our own stuff on it, and we've got some great partners building it, but we just knew, like, you guys have crazy amounts of ideas, and where you're going to take the engine is exciting to watch for sure. So.
Yeah, we felt like, we always talked about, like, can we release the source code to the engine? We always wanted to do that. We talked about it years and years ago, actually 7 years ago. Back in 2007, we even talked about, how do we get the engine source into everyone's hands? Because we know, us as developers, as game enthusiasts, that's what we would want, right? Yeah. So, but we were like, how do we make this work? We weren't even sure how the business model could work. And when finally we figured it out, it was pretty awesome to see, like, that.
Yeah. I think
just, full steam ahead, right?
I remember those meetings when we decided, oh my God, Source is going to be part of this. And, like, I know my reaction and several other reactions at first was like, that is crazy, why would you ever do that? And then you thought through, it was like, holy crap, this is actually really awesome, And already we're seeing a ton of pull requests on GitHub. Like, we thought, honestly, I was thinking, at first it was a few brave souls would adventure there, but I think there's a large number. I don't know the exact number, but it's been a lot. So
yeah, I think we're up to, at least a few dozen pull requests, and I know at least a dozen have been reviewed and accepted, which is it's great, and we do more, but we've been a little busy recoiling from the launch, but we're still working out our process for that. I'll talk more about the GitHub stuff later. It's something that I'm particularly enthusiastic about.
Yeah, Mike is the guy that's making the whole GitHub thing work right now, so if it doesn't work, Mike Fricker, epicgames.com.
Seems to be working okay.
Surprising. I would say that on the whole, we were kind of expecting some things to blow up, but on the whole, it's been much better than we expected as far as just stability and.
Yeah, it's a very complicated project actually. It's something that we realized. We knew from the Rocket beta because we'd done some betas of Unreal Engine 4 release, but it didn't include source code. There was no GitHub, and it didn't have. Well, there's so many online aspects to this product that it's quite the complicated thing.
Oh, yeah, I like this comment. Mike Fricker, get it going, whatever it is, yes. So also, part of the release, we have PC. We worked really hard to get Mac, and we've had a few hotfix issues. We're still continuing to make Mac a first class, full editor support.
Yep.
iOS is there, and Android. Android's another one that's kind of early for us, but you'll see in our next release, we've been working hard on actually all of them, honestly. So we're going to have continuous improvements on all those, and some more stuff to talk about here soon as well.
Yeah, and I think we can talk about, if you're interested in doing console development, we have consoles obviously working amazingly with UE4, and there's on the blog page right now we actually have a link where you can get to the custom licensing page and talk to us about that. But
yeah, there was a little kerfluffle of when we launched, we accidentally lost the custom licensing thing, but I think that's all sorted out now. And then the big key there is if you have your agreements and we can validate with Microsoft and Sony that everything's in the good, we can get you access to the console bids, right? And that's something we're going to look on continuously improving. So the key thing is it's not a fully automated process quite yet. So we still have to go through the established channels on that. But we're trying to make it happen, and we're having conversation with those guys now that they know about what we're doing, and we're to see if we can make it all just a seamless thing. So
I think we can say so we haven't, no console game is shipped in UE4 yet, but one will be shipping soon. Yeah, this month is it? Daylight, right? So Daylight will be shipping on PS4 soon, and we've been putting the engine through the Sony certification process, so that's been very successful actually. I think.
Yeah, and we're doing Xbox One, if not today, like next week,
awesome.
I believe. Yeah, so it's looking good, and we've got a lot of great partners focused on those next-gen consoles too, so it'll be a good option. And we also mentioned, before GDC, we saw Mozilla showed the HTML5 preview. We're working to integrate that and make that available. And then also we've got SteamOS and Linux. I would say these are still in the experimental phase. We don't really have a good taxonomy for this yet. So.
Yeah. So.
Ready for the adventurous, right?
Ready for the adventurous. We're testing it here. We're just starting to really test it thoroughly, but we have an enthusiastic team getting the Linux support up and running, and it's going along very, very, very well. And we've seen several of our samples up and running on it.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. So 4.1, we're hoping to have Linux support at least ready there for source users, so that you can go and compile the editor, build Linux, at least from Windows platform, you'll be able to build Linux using our cross-compiler toolchain, which if you saw the preview release today, has a link to the zip file, get the cross-compiler. I'll skip all the boring details because they're all written up, but you should be able to target that platform from Windows. And if it doesn't work perfectly in the snapshot, that snapshot was literally a snapshot from a build from our main branch yesterday afternoon. So it's totally live and unstable type of thing. So it's something that we'll be just trying to continually drip more stuff out to you like that.
Yeah, and speaking of platforms, we'll continue to stabilize that, and we really love you guys' feedback on what's working or the issues you run into, so we can make sure we address those as soon as possible. The other thing is on Android, since that is so early for us, we only have a handful of devices right now. We're getting a bunch more. It'd be really helpful if the community could kind of highlight, and I know some efforts have been started on this, of which devices are the most important that people are trying to target, so we can make sure we're testing those internally and all that good stuff too.
Yep.
I also had a note here to talk about a little bit our sort of continuous release goals. I don't know, Mike, you want to speak to what we're trying to accomplish?
I guess the general high level is we want to get things in your hands as fast as possible. So at Epic, we do builds every day, and we have a build promotion system. So QA does a smoke test on a build, and when the build looks kind of good enough that it won't catastrophically break or corrupt content, we promote it to our artists and our game teams, and our game teams start using it to build our games internally. That process works pretty well for us, as long as you're willing to deal with some uncertainties in the quality of the tools and the stability of the tools, because you're getting literally code that was just checked in. So we like that process though, and we see that our game teams like that process. It gets fast turnaround on bug fixes and feature requests, and we thought that would be cool if we could figure out how to take that process and make it open to everyone who is subscribed to UE4. So that's kind of our vision for it,
Yeah.
but it's going to take a little while to get the whole process wrangled.
Yeah, and longer term, we're going to work on, well, especially when we get 4.1 out, that'll be the first time we have multiple versions of the engine, right?
Yep.
And we know it's important. We don't want to, if you're mid-project on something, don't want to break your existing project. We don't want to force you to upgrade until you're ready to upgrade. That being said, with
right.
every release, we're not looking to break compatibility or anything like that. But we want to give you the option, and perhaps you just want to download it, play with it, and then make the decision, depending on the needs of your project. So we'll be working on tools to allow you to kind of pick and choose between which version of the engine. Mm-hmm. And then longer term, I don't know the time scale, but we'd love to say, yeah, if you want our nightly build or you want our weekly build or whatever that cadence is,
yep.
It's kind of, again, how adventurous are you feeling,
Yep. So the first step will be to get some of those snapshots more frequently onto GitHub for the source users, and then eventually we'll find a way to deliver it
for the binary too. Yeah.
Through the launcher's version of the engine as well, so that people don't have to fuss with the source to be able to try out the latest version of the engine.
Well, and to clarify, we were just talking specifically about the engine, the code itself. As you guys have seen with content, we're looking to always be releasing content, and cool, and of course documentation and videos.
Yep.
We're ramping up, having good processes and pipelines, so we can constantly be hearing from you guys what you want to see next, and get that in the queue and get it out as quickly as possible. Last week we got the Blueprint office out there, which is a great example. That was my go-to at GDC. Every time somebody wanted to see blueprints, I was like, here, look at the butterflies. Their entire animation, AI, everything, and I can pause it in real time. So.
Yep. I love that example because it actually doubles as pretty awesome rendering
demo
too. We always get good praise for that, but it's a really good example of what blueprints can do.
Yeah, it's funny, when I saw those butterflies, it reminds me, to date a little bit, you remember the Unreal 1 fish? When you first got off what was the name of the ship? You look in that pond, and Steve Polge, I think, wrote that AI. The little flocking AI is like Boyd's. It's just same, inspiration there.
All I remember from Unreal 1 was the water.
Oh, when you walk off the waterfall.
Yes. Yeah. Those great
cool.
moments at the beginning.
It's funny how different the game industry is these days.
No kidding.
Yeah, so cool. And then, so the snapshot on GitHub is up today?
All right, so we released, hopefully you guys saw, it was in the blog post that may have got you here. We released the Unreal Engine preview build today. So this is really just something along the lines of what Ray was talking about, continuous release. It gets you access to the code that literally came from, programmers here yesterday, so that many of us haven't even tried it. But at least you can download it and see the latest features that will be eventually QA tested and stabilized for 4.1, but many of these features are already in that build, so you can download them, try them out, and get us feedback before we even release 4.1, which I think is actually pretty cool. So just remember, it's a preview build. Be gentle. It hasn't gone through the full QA testing pass. We do exhaustive QA testing, but that pass for 4.1 is just starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we have a great QA team, and we'll get through it fast and get a proper stable build of 4.1 out, but just so you understand, the preview builds are preview builds, so for the adventurous.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, you don't even worry about being gentle. We realize now that the engine is much bigger than any number of people here,
That's true.
And then people use it in a variety of configurations and drivers and what have it. So anytime you guys find things, the biggest thing is we want to be able to fix, big issues as quickly as possible, and that's really what's driving us for this process, is get in the hands as quickly as possible so that people looking for specific things can have access to it, and then hopeful for the community at large, we can make sure there's more stable releases overall, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's funny what you find in these promoted builds, these snapshot builds. You'll load it up, and a whole section of the tool might just be missing, and you'll be like, "Wow, QA promoted this," because smoke tests don't catch everything. So a dark corner of the tool might just not be there. Although I think this one's going to be in good shape.
Yeah, we're good, and I think we're getting closer and closer to being on rails with these, so it should get smoother every month.
Yep.
Promise made, yes.
So I guess continue, the GitHub, just want to stay on that for a second.
Yeah.
So kind of the next thing we want to do with GitHub, and we've had some great feedback from people submitting pull requests and on the forums and on Answer Hub about improvements to the GitHub process. And I was going to start a discussion on the forums maybe later this evening, so that we can all have time to think about stuff. But I am really looking for feedback there. I'd love to have the changes that go to GitHub be actual kind of live changes, right? We want changes so that when a programmer on your team does a check-in, ideally you guys can get that access to that code very frequently, or very, very soon after that's checked in. And if we do things right, we'll have the change will be properly attributed to the person who made it. You'll have the comments that we would see when we're going and looking through revision control. And probably most importantly, all the connections and kind of the graph will be matched up, so things will make a lot more sense when you're spot merging changes to your own code branch, or you just want to go and inspect to see like what changed in in this build, like specifically like with things that I care about. So that's kind of like the direction we want to go in. It's taking us a little while to figure out the best way to do that, but we'll get there. Like our goal is to have a lot of that working by the time 4.1 comes out. So hopefully that ends up being the case.
Yeah. On that note, with GitHub, it's kind of a new process to a lot of us here. Like I had played with it a year or so ago as a side project when I was experimenting with web development, and it's real popular, but it's somewhat new to game industry, I think. And I don't know a lot of teams that have actively made it part of their process yet. So to some respects, we're still learning as we go on the best process of how to get it set up and work with people. So. And unfortunately, the GitHub guys have been really helpful with that. I don't know if you want to mention that. Like, we actually didn't tell the GitHub guys what we were planning before we launched.
Yep, they had no idea what was going on. I signed up for $25 with my credit card.
Yeah.
Made the Unreal Engine or the Epic Games organization and started testing it out. And we launched without them knowing. They found out kind of the same day at GDC at the show, and I met with them.
Traffic go. Woo.
I met with them the day after, but it was pretty funny actually. So
yeah, fortunately they were fans of the games we made, so it wasn't too bad.
So if you're talking to any GitHub guys, make sure to say thanks because they're paying for a lot of bandwidth for my $25.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually they really nice. They just sent us a whole ton of stickers that are pretty awesome. I gave a bunch to my daughter last night, so she loves them. The other part I wanted to mention is other things about us being more transparent and up to date with you guys is we've been experimenting with Trello internally with how we look at high-level engine planning and kind of where we want to go next. And something we're still trying to work out, but we want to hopefully do soon is have starting with our backlog, our wish list of things that we've identified internally, like asks that would be cool or new features that don't necessarily make sense on our current near-term schedule.
Yep.
But we had the idea of putting it out there so you guys could kind of let us know what you're most excited about, and that could help us make the decision of what some of we do next. So I don't have the exact time frame on that, other than we're working on it, and hopefully, sometime probably around the 4.1 time frame, we could get that out to you guys. And if there's other ways that you guys as a community would find helpful in understanding what we do and how we do it, or how we go about planning, feel free to let us know. This is sort of a grand experiment for us in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, even the whole roadmap and is still something that we're culturally, on the engineering team, still learning how to get better at too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's exciting times and changes for us.
It's oftentimes it looks a little bit like controlled chaos, I like to say, but it mostly works. It's cool.
Yep.
So we wanted to talk a little bit just to move on, or you want to talk more GitHub?
Oh, we'll go back to it.
All right.
There's questions later.
I'm sure there'll be questions about GitHub. UE4, our goal with UE4, a lot of learnings from past, working with UE3 and engine developers. Traditionally, game development was a very programmer-centric thing, right? And even starting with Kismet, that was the first time we kind of caught the iceberg of like, hey, if you kind of make it possible for designers to make stuff without having to talk to a programmer, amazing things can happen, right? I remember when we first started with visual scripting way back in the day, and Lee Perry, who used to be a designer here, one of the lead designer on Gears of War, he's a huge board game fanatic. One of the first things he did is went and take his favorite board game and recreate it entirely in Kismet without any programmer support. And we just like, holy crap, that was possible, right?
And since then, we've seen maybe 1,000 different prototypes from Lee Perry,
I know.
visual scripting.
Yeah, and then seeing where we've been able to go now with blueprints, and already we were kind of concerned. We know blueprints are super complex, and so we're kind of worried nobody would get them at first. But I think it's been really impressive how quickly people are picking it up, and we're getting a ton of great feedback. I know we're kind of looking at ways we can improve accessibility and education on that stuff. But the key there is we really see like there's a huge potential for empowering more people with the tools to just go end to end and not even need to pick up a line of code. That being said, if you're a programmer, clearly we've got a great workflow. Well, we've got a workflow that we're working on improving, right? Our C++ workflow. It definitely has some things that are kind of part of the Unreal way of doing things, but we're continuously working to improve those things. And we're also working on getting more documentation and tutorials out there to help people kind of get up to the speed with programming C++ and Unreal. So. But even looking at like artists who don't even want to make a game necessarily. They make these awesome mesh assets, and now they can fire it up in the tools, slap it through a couple shaders on there, and make it look awesome.
I think the blueprint stuff is really pretty interesting and exciting. It's every team and every person kind of has their own different feelings about it and how they would use the tool. But I think it's interesting to think about how it came about because it wasn't. You might think of it as like visual scripting. Oh, this is to appeal strictly to non-programmers, and that's not exactly true. Of course, like we've seen tons of non-programmers use it for awesome things, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons that we built this was actually because we've worked with so many licensees and professional game developers and game development teams that really saw the need to empower artists and designers so that those artists and designers could go and create new weapons, create new game types, create new pick up objects and scenery and things with brains in the scene. And I want to make a bookshelf, but I want the bookshelf to interact when I bump into it. It's like, it's going to be a lot of work to go talk to a programmer and convince him that this is more important than what he's working on. And it's like, this is the types of discussions that happen in the hallways at game development companies all the time, as you guys might know. So a tool like this sort of, even if it's just for prototyping purposes, allows these designers to be empowered, if they take the initiative to learn how blueprints work. And internally here on Fortnite, one of the games that we're working on, it's extremely exciting to see, the stuff that just pops out every day because these sort of the right brain side of things getting into the programming side so seamlessly.
Yeah, it really helped us iterate on our design process, right? Like, what's better than any design document is a working prototype, right? And sometimes with blueprints, that can actually be the same thing that you ship. You don't need to reprogram it or whatever.
Yep.
And as a longtime gameplay programmer, I can say I was a pain in the ass to deal with sometimes. So I can only imagine being able to bypass, I don't agree with your idea, therefore I'm not even going to bother, and now the designer can just make awesome shit, prove everybody, there is something there. And then, it's kind of hard to argue with that. So it's pretty exciting. And I think what we're excited to figure out is, what's the next step for blueprints, right? Do we really embrace visual programming and not just scripting, right? The engine, we think you can do a lot of things with it that are on the fringes of game development, right? So it'd be interesting to see. And I think that's, again, one, we're really inspired by the community and some of the, I don't know, eccentric maybe is too interesting of a word, but just all the interesting places that people are going to take the engine, I have a running joke with Tim. It's like, as soon as my refrigerator has a GPU worth its salt, I want to see Unreal Engine on it. I don't know what the point will be, but it'll be a cool science project, right?
Cool.
So do you want to talk a little bit about our development principles, maybe our philosophies?
Well, I guess there's
an extension of it.
It's not like we have a concrete list of these things. It's more just
written in stone, thou shalt.
It's funny, when UE4, we're talking about UE4 development principles, right?
Yeah.
The new engine.
Yeah.
I guess it started, I guess everyone has a different perspective on this. We had certain things that were definitely design goals, but one for me, I had worked on tools as the tools lead on Unreal Engine 3 for a number of years, and when I came here, the tools were, Unreal Engine tools were, they were amazing. They had just everything that you would ever need to ship, a AAA game,
But they were challenging.
Yeah, there were some rough edges, to say the least, right? And I came in very passionate about usability and just workflows and streamlining things, and I came in and just kind of wanted to tear things up, but it's a little difficult to just do that right out from underneath this big AAA team building Gears of War. You can't just go and uproot all the tools that we're used to. And we thought for a while, how we do this. We knew in UE4, we'll get it right in UE4 is what we always kept saying that. And when we finally got the opportunity to start in proper and kind of just made a branch, started tearing things out. No game team was using it quite yet. It was very exciting times.
Did Vogel get his chainsaw out?
Vogel deleted code, Tim deleted code, everyone was in there. It was great, right?
Yeah.
Before that happened, we had some idea of the the key things that we knew the product would be, but for me, just focusing on the usability side of things, and this was years and years ago, because it took a while for us to get to this point, was really exciting. Being able to take a look at these tools that we had and sort of try to reboot them from, what would a user want without having to go and RTFM or go on the forums or Stack Overflow and read about how to do something. How can we make this a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, and also just make things more modern and normal instead of just kind of retro Windows 95 look like the old versions of Unreal Engine maintained for so long.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that struck me is like for the longest time, especially UE3, we were really, if we weren't using it in our games, we were very unlikely to support it, right? Just because we were concerned if we weren't using it on a regular basis, then it would rot, and we wouldn't, and it wouldn't be a good experience for people. And I think now is really the paradigm has shifted. We look at it as we want to make UE4 viable for whatever people want to do with it to some extent, right?
Yep.
And the one thing that resonated with me is when the architectural, like that design sense of let's build for the next 10 years, right? Let's not just do next-gen consoles and call it done, right?
Yep.
We in some respects we got kind of trapped with when we were going UE2 to UE3. We kind of ran out of time mid-transition. We're like, oh god, let's go ship this game now. And so there was some code that was like half refactored and half not, and eventually we got it to a great spot. And a lot of cool games are made with UE3. But I think the transition from UE4 was great because then it was just literally delete masses of things. Nothing is sacred. Go do the right thing and not the thing that we need to do tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And we want to retain that moving forward. And I got to tell you, it's really challenging when we look at there's only so many of us, and then we look at, there's a million platforms it feels like these days, and the engine is bigger than it's ever been, I think.
But we're really fast and we're really good, so.
Oh, okay. Nice. And we're very humble, too, Mike, very humble. So I think that's interesting for us moving forward, right? And in doubling down on systems like Blueprints, right, and really making it possible for people to really, truly do anything. Like, you can even script the editor with Blueprints now, right? Like, that blows my mind still.
Well, sort of. But you can do some stuff with it.
Well,
you can do.
You can sort of, yes.
Ideally, eventually, we want to make it so that you can actually write whole editor extensions with.
You could write an editor in the editor for the editor.
Yep. But yeah, we have some Blueprint scripting. Definitely, you can build awesome in-level utility.
Yeah.
Blueprints.
Yeah, totally. And then, as we've got a little bit of a plug-in architecture in there today, a module system. We'll continue to improve and grow that, and make it easier for people to sort of hot swap these things. And
yeah, I don't know how far off topic we're getting here, but oh well.
Yeah.
But the plugin system is still kind of like a work in progress. But the version that we have out there now, actually, we don't really talk about it much because we don't feel like it's quite done yet, but it kind of does work, and we're using it, as you can see, for engine plugins. There's a plugins viewer in the editor under the window menu, and you can pop that open and see kind of like sort of built-in plugins. And more like those plugins are not plugins because they'll ever be like, separate from the engine or anything. It's more just like us building things this way ourselves helped us make sure that we could build the engine in such a way that was as extensible as possible. So we sort of started eating our own dog food there. We've been doing that for like the last year or so, and it's been fairly successful. But that's something that we'll require feedback from you guys to figure out, how can we make that even better. But
yeah, definitely.
Cool.
I saw a note about we must both be programmers because we're wearing plaid. I take offense to that. Sorry, no, just kidding.
Yeah, I always find out late what I should be wearing, but years late.
Yeah. Well, we are in a fashion bubble in North Carolina, I think, so. And then I saw a comment about being young. Like, I don't know about you, Mike, but I got started basically as a modder on Unreal 1 right out of high school. Like, I think during high school, as soon as I get my hand on Unreal Ed, I remember it used to take like 5 minutes to boot because I had like a Pentium 33 or something. I don't even know. It was crazy. But yeah, we've been doing this a while now.
Yep. Yeah. I started when I was just a little kid trying to make games, but I actually released a product when I was 16 called, it was a BBS software.
BBS.
Turbo Pascal called Inequity BBS. But since then, since I was able to get a 286 with a good enough processor that, I could actually run stuff, I've been trying to do this. Yeah.
I remember my dad had like a 386 SX or something like that, and we got really hooked on Wing Commander. And it was back in the days where you're like hacking config.sys and autoexec.bat to like, was it EMS memory versus, I don't even remember anymore. And then it was so cool. One day we bought like the 4 meg memory expansion thing and plugged that thing in, and all of a sudden we had like a joystick. It just blows my mind. Now it's like, I don't even know how much memory's in my computer. Like, the world has changed too much.
Yep. So yeah, we've been doing this a long time, and we're also probably not that young.
Youngish.
Well,
it is funny. How old is the game industry? Well, the game industry is older than us, at least. So.
Older than us.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. The sad thing I will say on that, though, I remember hacking on Unreal 2 for Xbox One, and how exciting it was to save like 4 kilobytes of memory. If I wouldn't save 4 kilobytes of memory right now, nobody'd be like, why'd you waste your time? Especially with some of our shaders. All right. Cool. I don't know. Do you want to just jump in? Like we talk about, we had the hotfix come out recently, right?
Yep. So as fast as possible, we tried to get critical issues resolved. You guys saw that. We got a hotfix out. We couldn't get everything in there. Obviously, some things were lined up for the hotfix even before we had released because, just some latency there. But as soon as we saw critical issues, we tried to get them into the hotfix. And we're still trying to figure out how we do hotfixes. Like, I'm not sure if we're going to do a 4.03 yet, but I see some changes that are possibly lined up for that.
Yeah.
So it's still not quite decided, but I think the idea right now is we're saving hotfixes for like kind of catastrophic corrupting or things that prevent you from being able to do work. But
well,
yeah, see.
I mean, our philosophy there is we never want to leave people hanging, right? So if you're blocked by something on a particular thing, you can't upgrade to the next build that has a fix.
Yep.
Even if we don't do a hotfix, maybe we can get you a QFE or something to make sure
Yep.
So if you ever run those cases, let us know if it's on the forums or the Answer Hub or whatever, and we can definitely figure something out, right?
Yeah, we're getting the infrastructure set up pretty gracefully. Like you'll be able to eventually take a QFE rather than downloading a zip file and clobbering stuff.
Yeah.
You'll be able to access certain fixes straight from the launcher and help us test those before they go live, which that's something I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah. And so this is all kind of brand new to us. In the past, we've generally our release process has been maybe every month there's a build that we chuck over the fence and address a few issues. But we're definitely looking to improve that, no doubt. And then anytime you guys run into issues, we've got tons of people always keeping track of what's on Answer Hub. That's sort of our best resource to address things and make sure we're tracking things. So please, post all your issues there. And then as we've been talking about, 4.1 is coming soon.
Yep.
We're not sure on the exact date because, it kind of depends on the issues you run into as we try to stabilize. We put preview notes. Those are up there now, right?
The preview notes are up there. We have a forum post. We have a blog post.
We have some.
The preview build is up with the 4.1 changes. Almost all of the 4.1 changes. I think all except for maybe one.
Yeah, it's awesome. Print it out. It's like 4 pages of preview.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I saw someone write on the forum. I haven't had a chance to read the forum yet since we posted it, but I did see one post, and they're just like, so soon. But like to us, this is actually kind of normal because we're used to releasing builds almost monthly for, historically for traditional custom licensees. We would just, every month we try to stabilize the build and get that out. So we love releasing builds quickly with, big features. That's kind of just what we've been doing for years and years and years and years. So this is nothing new. To us, it's more taking that process and adapting it to all this kind of more complicated surface area that everything has to touch now. There's the web, and we have the launcher stuff, and the GitHub, and it makes the process more complicated than ever before. But at the same time, it's pretty cool in that development-wise, all of our engineers just know how to do this. This is just what they know how to do, is release builds like this quickly.
Well, and part of us getting in the habit of sustaining this and not being like this crazy, everybody, just focus on one release at a time is like, hey, we're going to branch on this day.
Yep.
If it's in there, it's in there. If it's not, it's going to potentially the next release, right? And us making that sort of, we're going to constantly be doing releases when we can, when it makes sense. So it relieves some pressure, right? Because in the past, like especially if you're shipping a game, it's like, okay, if it's not by this day, it may get cut forever, right? Which is awesome now. We don't have to worry about that, right? It's just a matter of when we get out there. And then we're trying to figure out like a good way to talk about these things when, as you say, like Linux today, experimental, We're not going to promise it's necessarily, super smooth, polished experience yet, but it is functional. We've got it up and running with I think Shooter Game is the one we've been working with that. And then for the next stage, we'll have further updates as we kind of get to the final stage of, this is a fully blessed feature, everybody have at it. So,
cool. Yeah. Also in the 4.1 update, I kind of wanted to give a plug to some of the maybe underrated tools features because I definitely care about the tools features.
Yeah.
So we have scene outliner folder system now, which is something that I've wanted for a long time, and the tools team did a great job getting that in. And we'd already seen requests for this on the forums too, but it was just very timely that it was already in the process of being QA tested for the next release. So folder system allows you to organize your actors in the scene outliner. It's not a spatial organization like grouping or parenting. It's just organization for your own sanity, basically. Like go ahead and group things however you want. You can create folders, you can search for them, you can move folders within folders, you can still parent and have attached actors inside folders. It's just to keep your scene more organized, just like how you can label actors, the way that you would want to keep your scene, hopefully not from getting too crazy. So.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of those level of features, which are just good for people actually using the tool on a regular basis that aren't necessarily big shiny things we're going to go market or whatever. We want to get in the habit of like a build is a build, right? It is a point in time. It has a bunch of cool stuff because people are always doing new things, and we're responding to the things that you guys find. And then over time we'll sprinkle in as they're ready. Here's the big feature X, right?
Yep.
So just hopefully that way all the time you have something good and useful to be looking forward to.
Yep.
That's our goal. So yeah, and if you go through these on the forum, undo history. Translation editor, that'll be useful. Geometry editing is an interesting one. That one we're still in the brainstorming of kind of where we evolve that one. So
we're planning, so geometry editing, if you look in the code, so you guys have the code, a lot of the guts of it are actually fairly, Tim Sweeney himself probably wrote half of the BSP.
All the BSP holes are still his bugs.
Probably, yeah, if there's bugs with BSP, it's Tim Sweeney's fault. A lot of that code just, I guess the way to put it is it stood the test of time. Like it worked well enough that we kept it this long. So, but that system's due for fairly significant usability overhaul. We have a lot of ideas. So that's something that we're just pondering about how fit in the pipe sometime in the next whatever. But
yeah, and I think that's one of those things when we get our backlog out there, our wish list, you'll see more of like the kind of things that we're still noodling on. I just saw a question fly by about the future of Slate. That we just had a meeting yesterday, and we're going to have another one tomorrow, like a brainstorm of what we have ideas and lots of very passionate ideas.
Well, we know we want an interactive UI editor, so that's coming. We're going to do that. Everyone's cool with that. It's more just the approach. So that's what we're talking about. And I think Ray, you would agree. Like that's one of, if not the most high priority tools features that.
Full stop. No. Yeah, definitely. It's something. Yep. And honestly, like we've been talking about that. You guys have been talking about it for a long, long time.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And that's one of those where we just sometimes too we run the danger. Just this is like with any development. These features, these systems can be really big and lots of work to actually build the full vision of them. And then sometimes we get caught and we only see like this giant thing that doesn't fit anywhere. Right? It's just too damn big.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what I like to, or I try to do is help like kind of can we just break it down and do this part first, and at least get the ball rolling. Because a lot of times too, when we have discussions and we're theory crafting about what we should do or shouldn't do, it's based on ideas that may or may not stick once we actually go build the thing, and more importantly, once people start using it, right?
Yep, it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but as we build this tool, it's good. You guys will see the snapshots. You guys will have the work in progress builds. It will probably be one of those features that you can just opt into with a command line switch or with an experimental preference in the editor, and you can just try out whatever messy state it's in as we build it up. You'll kind of see, and this is part that's really exciting to me because we get we don't have to like build something up sort of guessing what people want. Of course, we know what our internal teams want, and we have lots and lots of experienced people with what a tool like that would probably involve. But it's just going to be awesome to get that kind of live feedback about work in progress development. I think it's going to be cool.
And speaking about our internal game teams, I feel bad for them sometimes because I feel like we've had to tell them no sometimes that they just go and do it themselves. And it's an interesting opportunity with having this community out there is to kind of revitalize our approach to that of like, anything is possible. Let's get everything on the table and then figure out what's the most important thing at a time, right?
Yep.
And try to make sure we're not leaving anybody hanging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, on that too, I think there are still some nuggets of like things in progress, like hidden in the source code that have they all been discovered yet, Mike?
Oh, I don't know if I've heard about. There's still quite a few things that we have lots of experimental features. Some are in the UI that you can turn on. Others are just buried away, enabled only by some programmer who knows some special option. Yeah. But there's definitely we know about them all. I think we know about them all. There's no secrets to me in the code, but there's some good ones in there. And you'll see if you go and pick through it, you'll see. So I mentioned Slate Viewer, which is interesting. I don't think we ever explained what Slate Viewer was to anyone.
Nice.
But you'll see kind of the beginnings of our new cinematics editing tool, which is codenamed Sequencer. You can enable that via command line switch. I wouldn't do it. We haven't done it in like a while.
Unlikely to work,
it probably won't work. But you can see there's a lot of foundational code in there, and that's something that we put a lot of work into sort of building a prototype, and then we put it on pause while we went to work on this launch. But we're going to get back there, and we're going to build that out, and it's going to be awesome.
Hopefully, definitely. It comes up. I was talking about it today, actually. I just saw there's apparently an open tournament, Unreal Tournament 4 thing going on. That sounds cool.
Oh yeah, I just heard about that yesterday as well.
Awesome.
Someone was working on a spiritual sequel, a successor or something.
Yeah, I remember we were wondering if people, when they saw shooter game, were like, "Oh my God, it's the next UT."
Yeah.
No, it's just shooter game.
It's funny. Shooter games development is interesting. Epic Games Poland, which used to be called People Can Fly, developed most of Shooter Game, along with the help of our teams here. But like, they found very quickly while they were building it that they started doing deathmatch sessions almost every night, even though it's just like this, it's supposed to be this sort of example shell, so that a starting place for other community of developers, but they're just like, oh, we just got to add this other feature because this game is it's about to be really, really good if we don't have this, like, we have to add this. So it got to be a little bigger than I think we thought it would, but it ended up being a great example because it showcases a lot of online features, including like leaderboards and like achievements and stuff like that all in there, which is really cool.
And especially Hi-Res is a great rendering feature test for us as well when we're going to new platforms, That's funny. It is a big trap in development, though. I remember with Unreal Championship 2, we were doing daily playtests, and those got longer and longer. We kept adding more and more features, because as we got better at the game, we wanted to add more complex things. So by the time we actually released that game, it was absolutely amazing, but it was impossible to learn, right? Like, there were like 3 masters in the world, and they could totally destroy you in 2 seconds, but yeah.
Didn't that game have crazy broken melee combat? Like,
no,
just
crazy
way
awesome,
too strong?
Crazy awesome melee. And you could reflect missile. It was amazing. Anyways, long time ago.
It was fun. We should talk about Elemental.
Oh, okay. So talk about.
Oh, well, so with 4.1, I think we're timing it at the exact same time. We've had a team working on actually updating the Elemental assets so that they would match kind of the editor's new default scale, which is kind of just normal metric scale. Yeah. Because it was authored in kind of a weird, strange way that, we could have released, but we thought it would be better to just kind of fix it up so that if you pulled an asset from it, it would kind of look right in some other project that you built or in another sample project. So the team has, I think they've completed it, or they're close to completing it.
They're close, yes.
It's been testing, so we're hoping to release that with 4.1 around the same time, and I think you'll just get everything. It's just yours. You can use it in your game projects, pull assets from it, or just look at the awesome rendering stuff in there and learn about how to do cool stuff that way.
Yeah, it'll be a great example for some of the crazy GPU particle effects and all that, right?
Yep. I don't know, like, are we keeping the walk around part of the level? Is it just like the cinematic? I don't know. I'm not sure exactly if it's been chopped up or not. But
the guy who would answer that is conveniently not at his desk
at his desk. But it will have the whole cinematic. Yep. I know that. So it should be pretty awesome.
Cool. And then also, like we mentioned earlier, we've already been incorporating code from the GitHub.
Someone asked about procedural buildings, which I thought.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a UE3 feature that we had.
Yeah, James and I were working on that for, that thing. That thing back in the day, yes.
Yeah, Ray's all too familiar with that feature.
So that was fun. I don't know. I'll say, I don't know that we have current plans on procedural building. I mean, you have the construction blueprints. Yeah, you can do some stuff there.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you definitely could. But
it doesn't have the LOD thing that you would really want, right?
When we transitioned to UE4, I mean, some features that were more auxiliary features or features that we weren't using at the moment, or that had major usability problems, just got the axe. And then we thought, we'll just go back and reboot these, knowing all the awesome stuff that we know now, we could do a better job anyway. So that was one of those features that just did not come across when we went to UE4.
Long-lived proc buildings. Maybe they'll come back.
Proc buildings, yeah, it was a cool feature.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, there's some great companies out there I saw doing like city rendering at large scale and all that. And there's some super high-resolution GPS data out there now, or like 3D modeling. It'd be cool to play around with that sometime. And sorry, I was mentioning, we've got quite a few community code contributions that we've actually integrated and will be part of the 4.1 release. We didn't want to bumble people's usernames on air, but they're all listed out there on the forums, and we want to make sure that people get a shout out for that.
I think this is good to highlight too. Like, we're still kind of working out how we want to do all this stuff, but I mean, if you guys contribute stuff back to the engine, it's very important to me that you guys get credit, and we're going to find a way to make sure that people know about your contribution, and that will be forever, right? Yeah. Like, we'll put it in the editor, we'll put it in GitHub, we'll put it wherever. So, like, that's just something that is in the pipe. I would just want to make sure you guys know about. Something definitely. We care about.
Cool. Laptop keeps turning off. So, the other cool thing, I don't know if it's actually live today. Do we know?
It's coming on.
Okay, any minute now.
I am until then right now.
Okay, they're gonna pull the trigger because we're gonna say it right now. So, as you guys may or may not have seen, we have a realistic rendering showcase. We're actually releasing that today. Like right now, they're clicking the buttons. So
levers are switching.
It's a series of pulleys and tubes.
Right.
That's really cool. It's actually the same environment we used for the couch night. Is that what we called it? Yeah, for our Oculus VR demo for you guys that saw it at GDC. It's just a good showcase with our lighting. Oh, it looks like it's actually live.
Oh, awesome, cool.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
You guys can kind of see what it looks like. So Paul Mader and Nick Donaldson
Yep.
built this. Two of our senior artists here.
Yep. Yeah, I would say, Nick Donaldson, one of our design hackers, and Paul Mader, one of our, tech artists extraordinaires, right?
Oh yeah, Nick Donaldson, total. I'm not even sure what he can do. So many things now.
I don't know. Well, half the time I walk in there, he's either got some VR thing on his head or some crazy new controller.
Yes.
It's. I think he's got a fun job, just kind of experimenting with random things.
So the idea with this demo is that we show you guys how our take on a photorealistic kind of scene with Unreal Engine 4 that uses light mask based global illumination, real time reflections, photometric lights.
The eye adaptation.
Yeah, and I think even more so, one of the things that just the textures, the actual content's authored in such a way that, the careful attention to texture detail, making sure that if you get the camera up close to something, you kind of see the little details you wouldn't expect. If you kind of spend some time with this one, I think that you'll be impressed with how.
Is Nick Donaldson? His nickname is Neoduck? I didn't know that.
Cool.
I'll have to go mock him now. I don't know. Nobody's allowed to know what my nickname was back in IRC days. Were you actually on IRC?
Oh yes. So yeah, I made an IRC client and everything.
Wow.
Back. Oh yes, this is not to be spoken of. Someone's gonna go look me up now.
Were you a bit of a hacker or something? Are you on the wrong side of the law?
Not really. Remember, I worked on BBS software, right? So I was like, I had this. When I was building what I thought was the most powerful, best BBS software of all time, and the internet came along and just basically clobbered it. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, this whole thing that you've been doing for the last 3 years as a teenager, obsolete.
That's funny.
Instantly obsolete.
I remember I wasn't really into BBSs, but I got hooked into MUDs, and I remember. I guess I learned pointers at that point on Circle Mud because you download the source, and I just randomly, let me try an asterisk. Did that work? Oh no, it crashes. Let me try double asterisk, right? I was pretty young.
So Dana, is that live on the marketplace now?
Yeah,
Can people download?
They say they're downloading.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, so as long as you have a UE4 subscription, you should be able to get the realistic rendering demo right now.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great assets that you guys can use for whatever, right? So, cool. Yeah, I'd be curious too. We spent a lot of time on that starter content pack, and I know Mike was freaked out before we launched because it was huge at one point.
I know. I was really trying to I wanted the download to be really small for you guys, and it's funny the stuff that we kept a lot of unexpected cool stuff we just kept packing in there, and I couldn't figure out how to split it out. But
well, it happens a lot here because I think everybody at Epic is generally enthusiastic to get cool stuff out there, and so when we said, "Hey, we're doing this thing," all of a sudden, a whole bunch of artists were like, "Oh, this material and this texture," and by the way, it was really fun. We had it wasn't religious, but it was a very deep debate about the default material.
Oh yes. If Warren was here, he'd have an opinion about this too.
Yeah.
But
that
world
was fun.
space texturing, how it should line up with the grid, just how it should tile, how.
Yeah, it was funny, because we're it must tile. The last thing it should do is tile. You can never tile, right?
Yes.
It's aliasing, blah, blah, blah.
It should have a normal map. No, it shouldn't have a normal map. No, it can't be this shiny.
We totally need to capture more of these, just because they almost seem absurd in hindsight, really. But, that's part of our process.
And, a lot of these details are important.
Yeah.
I don't know if the default material, for me, I'm not sure, but a lot of things that really were important we did fuss over, and I thought that hopefully that was worthwhile. It's the equivalent of agreeing on a good coding standard, right? Where do you put your curly braces? Just don't talk about it, right? Yeah. We spent a lot of time on just at the last second trying to get things just a little more polished in every little spot. And I mean, we didn't get everywhere. Obviously, it's a huge surface area, and we'll get to it over time. But we've kind of been polishing for years. But now is we really want to people are just about to see this. So it was kind of a fun, exciting time.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume it's probably pretty common for most creative individuals is that we tend to try to be perfectionists, which is clearly impossible now, So it's been an interesting transition for a lot of us of it's okay if it's not perfect, right? We will, we'll be able to touch it again or, make it better.
Definitely, yep. Just being able to, I mean, obviously we don't want to ship anything that isn't perfect, but it happens, and now, we can listen to you guys and we can fix it quick, and that's the good thing. We're good at fixing things quick, so. Yeah.
All right, cool. Hi, FK prods. I don't know. Try, if you're not seeing it on the marketplace, try restarting the launcher. I think sometimes the cache can, I don't know if we've sorted that issue out yet or not, so. Cool. All right. I don't know, do you want to jump into more questions, or?
I can't think of anything. I mean, there's maybe a few things. I don't know. Like, I had some C++y things in my.
You want to talk about C++ real quick? Go for it.
I mean, maybe. I don't know if the audience here really cares about.
All right, let's
go to questions. If questions are more fun.
Well, I did see a question before of I think somebody mentioned SpeedTree. Like, yeah, we are working with them now. Huh?
PBS, that's funny.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
nice. Oh, he knows.
I still have an ancient website up that's like
Secrets unveiled.
I was like,
Sorry, SpeedTree, we are working with those guys and a bunch of other, similar things to make that work. I think actually the SpeedTree guys are down in South Carolina, so I think they're going to drive up here in a week or so, and we can get it all integrated. And over time, we, like with anything, the plugins you guys want to see, we want to make sure that it's viable to get them in there. So we're pretty open about that these days.
Yeah, we're hoping with the GitHub access, it will make it even easier for partners to integrate and provide their integrations to you guys in a way that you can grab and integrate with as little pain as possible. And then, I mean, obviously, we're going to push people toward making plugins as well. So that's the most seamless possible integration, where on a per project basis, you can choose to enable or disable, a feature. It's very granular and very, like that's kind of the direction we're going. Some integrations might work that way.
Yeah.
Some might not. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how we do with that. It's going to be an evolution of a process, but hopefully we have all the groundwork in place where you can build extensions like that to the engine and the runtime. So I'm really excited about that, actually.
I saw another question about Blender specifically. Unfortunately, that's a part of that isn't part of the industry is not entirely standardized as far as model in file structures and imports. And previously Collada was sort of the one-stop shop, but my understanding is that's not really the solution it used to be. And we've been focusing on FBX and addressing issues there, but apparently Blender, because it's sorry, I'm probably flubbing this a little bit, but it's a GPL license, so they're not actually a true FBX. They've sort of got to reverse engineer, so there's some weird things.
They're not using the Autodesk FBX SDK for exporting, which is okay. They rolled their own kind of FBX exporter.
So the takeaway is there, a lot of you guys have been sending us content that isn't working, and we're trying to address all those issues. We don't have an official answer for Blender quite yet, but we are looking into it. There's just, we'll see what we can do,
Yeah, so some stuff works with Blender. We clearly need to test it better. Yeah, we have people here that are really passionate about it, so it's going to happen. I think it's more just like we didn't have all the correct test cases for our QA guys. Yeah. But it's getting there. I think the problem historically has just been we hadn't seen a lot of requests for Blender before. Well,
our guys are just using Max or Maya, right? So.
Yeah. In UDK, when we did the UDK 3, the older version of Unreal Engine that was available, we did see some requests for Blender there, but most of the development team had moved on to UE4 by then, and that code was particularly treacherous. So it was one of those that was like a little bit hard to go back to justify going back to fix.
Yeah.
But now we'll just got to get it working.
Oh, well, somebody's got it working, so that's good.
Awesome.
Well, for static message.
Yeah, it works okay for the basics. It works. It does work.
Yeah. So, but it's something we'll keep working on it. And on the road editor, we don't have explicit plans for road editor. Sorry. I mean, we do have the spline tool, which is good for some things, but I think it's something. Honestly, I don't know that we ever talked about a road editor before.
I know. I saw threads at some point. It's just like, Unreal Engine's road editor is kind of weird, and like there's some pictures of like roads on terrain, and it's like, man, was that done on an Epic Friday or something like that, like some kind of pet project?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hadn't. I don't think we expected to have a road editor, but not yet. But clearly, like some people really want it, so we can do it.
Cool. So from Daydreamer in the forums, the question was: are there plans to expand on existing Slate functionality, create more feature-rich visual UI development environment, or plans to integrate a third-party solution? So the answer to that, I think, is both. We talked earlier, we're working on what we call UMG, Unreal Motion Graphics, which will be our, hopefully, WYSIWYG UI editor. And part of that, too, we're talking about, hey, even for VR experiences, how to have in-world UI, like what would that take? Yep. So we'll hopefully have more details on that soon. I don't know, is Scaleform... Is there a plugin working now? Or?
There's a Scaleform integration. I don't know whether there are plans to make it more widely available, but Scaleform has an integration. Yeah. You've seen the coherent UI,
the coherent stuff
which is
cool.
HTML5 based UI, at least for desktop platforms. I don't know if they have it working on mobile and consoles, but coherent UI is pretty cool. I've seen the demos. So I think those guys might be one of the first integrations that we have, like GitHubified. We'll see. Yeah. I know they're working on it, and they're super interested to get that out there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of takeaway on Slate right now. Is it, Slate? Can you speak about the design of Slate? I guess it's around the editor.
Well, I mean, Slate was so Unreal Engine 3 used Wix widgets for a UI system, which is still great popular UI system today for building cross-platform applications, but it had gotten kind of long in the tooth for us. So at the end of Unreal Engine 3, we started using some more Microsoft-specific stuff like Windows Presentation Foundation, WPF, which Ray knows all about too. So some of the editors started being built in that, and it was this weird kind of like, I don't want to say interop hell between like 4 different languages. You had XAML and C++ and C#, and C++ CLI, which is like the managed layer on top of C++ that Microsoft built. So it was kind of a mess to maintain. So we didn't have a great experience with that, even though we thought the UI stuff we could produce was rather cool. So when we started UE4, we're like, what are we going to do for the editor UI? And we're like, well, we have all the right people here to build an awesome UI system ourselves. We already know how all these different systems work, and we're pretty good with graphics too. So let's go and build like a fully GPU-powered immediate mode UI system. And that's kind of how Slate started. So a fellow on the team, Nick Adamus, who's pretty much one of our foremost UI experts, I'd say, and contributed greatly to the usability of the editor in UE4. He built a prototype for Slate, which was called Proto GUI. This was years ago.
Wow.
This is like 4 or 5 years ago now. This is a long time ago. And he built a fully functional prototype, and then we liked the prototype, and it kind of aligned with where UE4 was going as far as how we were planning it out to go ahead and start building Slate and C++. So that was kind of how it started. We knew it was programmer-centric UI. We wanted it for rapidly prototyping and building applications and tools. It was there so that we could get the editor built. And then while we were building it, because it was all GPU-based, it was using the same renderer, the same techniques that we used to draw the rest of the engine and game viewports and everything else. It was so well integrated already, we were like, this will work fine as game UI. We can use this for game UI, at least for prototyping game UI especially. It works fine for prototyping game UI. It works fine now for full games if Slate suits your project well. And for some projects it does. It does, like for Fortnite. Fortnite is using Slate for
Slate,
all of the runtime UI and HUD. Everything's in Slate. So that's something probably we should do a blog post on at some point, just because it'd be actually very interesting the way that they're using it. It instills a lot of good best practices, I think. So that's something that we would probably get rolling.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's kind of like sort of the quick history of it. I think it's an awesome platform for application UI. I think if you look at how some of the editor modules are built in code, at first it can be a little off-putting, and we know the documentation is sparse, and we're going to work on the documentation. We are working on the documentation. It's like one of the top priorities. But I think you kind of get the hang of it fairly quickly if you're familiar with things like XAML or declarative-based UI, where everything's in kind of a neat tree rather than building up a bunch of temporaries on the stack.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot of interest in more information on Slate. So let's get Nick Adamus writing some documentation.
Can I write on the camera?
Yeah. Let's call him up.
Drag him in here.
Yes. All right. Yeah. Cool. So we're definitely we're deeply invested in Slate. We have a lot of cool ideas. We'll be talking more. And we're really interested in anything we do, especially when it comes to something like UI, making sure it's well integrated with other things like blueprints and all that, so you can do.
Slate is pretty. It has a cool side because we built it all ourselves. It's fully cross-platform. Like it works on an iPad. Actually, it works on other platforms. So it's kind of some cool thing. Like you could actually use it to build standalone applications. Someone asked about Slate Viewer earlier, but Slate Viewer is like our test bed for GUI widgets that you can just compile and load up. But so
some people are complaining about our TV.
What?
Why do we have a TV behind?
I was expecting when we talked about realistic rendering, to be on here, but I guess
nice. That would have been cool.
Too complicated.
Okay. Next time.
Better at engineering than wires.
Cool. So here's a question. I'm gonna get this wrong. Sorry. Zuriel on the forums. I know you guys are working on some documentation for doing multiplayer and networking things in blueprints, and I'm just wondering how that is going and if we'll be seeing sample content in the future along those lines. I would say networking in blueprints is still a bit of an arcane art that we're, even our own guys, like for the Couch VR thing, it was a bit of a crash course to get that working. But it is something we're working on. I'm not sure the state on docs, but I would definitely expect some things to be coming soon on that. So
that's one. I think if James was here, he would say that. I mean,
would he cry a little?
When we started, people who are using blueprints to prototype things internally for their projects were just like, okay, got it working this far, now I need what networking. So we're going to add networking to the scripting system. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be a little crazy. But we got it in there. But it gets a little dangerous. And when you start dealing with replication, I mean, replication is not it's not crazy complicated concept,
Yeah.
but when you're dealing with all the nuts and bolts of getting a bulletproof implementation, even in C++, and it can be a little, I mean,
It's interesting, even back in UE2 days, replication is, generally when you write code, you write it, it's a linear, it's implicit, right? Things execute in order, right? When you come to networking, packets do all kinds of shit, right? They may never show up, or they may show up, 10 minutes later, and you still got to make sure that does the right thing. And so with UE3 and Kismet, we kind of just, opted out, right? We said, you can't do anything. The only way you can impact networking, if you did client-side Kismet, it was purely for like particles and sounds and stuff like that. But clearly that doesn't cut it for blueprints. We need to really enable the whole thing. So it's I'm not sure that we have super concrete plans, but I would definitely see improvements there over time.
If you guys need more documentation on a specific subject, just let us know on AnswerHub.
Well, hopefully James is watching right now and furiously typing as we speak.
Yep, fix it, James. Fix it.
It's all his fault, unless it's Mike's fault. Here's a fun one from Son Kim on the forums. Will Epic Games work on a fully dynamic real-time GI solution to replace Sfogy, or will you rely on Lionhead's LPV implementation going forward?
Oh, Sfogy. I wish Daniel Wright was here to answer the Sfogy question. He has the best answer to this.
Yeah. So we don't currently have plans to resurrect that, right?
We brought up the idea of bringing it back just for fun and just putting it on GitHub or something for you guys to just take and screw around with.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem is like it's integrated against a very old version of the engine, and the engine was unsightly at that time because UE4 was still in the middle of development. So we kind of just didn't want to throw it up on the internet. Yeah. But it's not out of the question. I just think for now it probably won't happen.
Yeah, I mean it's a mix of we want to have a good option depending on how dynamic or how static. We're still in a world where sometimes the best results are from statically lit environments, right? And then finding some combination, and we're really just focusing on a good set of options. But I wouldn't say we have concrete plans to go full dynamics beyond what we can offer right now.
Yeah, this Foggy technique, was beautiful in contrived situations. But I mean, and it's great if you're building a game that works in that contrived situation. If you had a vast area, you'd be using gigabytes of video memory or crazy amounts of GPU power to deal with that. And we saw that it wasn't going to work for most games, at least in the implementation that we had done. But it made for awesome tech demos, for better or worse. Of course, as we were building it, we thought we could solve all these problems, but we weren't sure at the time what consoles would be like, what computers would be like in a few years, and it just didn't seem like the right fit.
Yeah, I remember when early days when you guys were showing off, was it like Samaritan and like, was it the two Titans duct taped together in an air conditioner to keep them from catching fire to run that?
That's right.
It's like, I don't know if the consoles are going to make it quite to that level of performance, but
at GDC, our first demo with Sfogy with UE4, like we burnt out so many computers on the show floor. Like NVIDIA was like hustling over new boxes.
That's awesome.
It was pretty funny. Because we were on bleeding edge hardware at the time as well too.
Yeah.
And then subsequent demos, we were able to go to current
hardware. That reminds me of when we first showed the first version of Gears of War at E3. Man, that must have been 2004, 2005. And this was before we were on dev kits. And so it was another one that, I don't know if it was NVIDIA at the time, but like a giant GPU that was just, catching fire. And back in the day, we were in Microsoft's booth in the back private room, and it was tiny, and there was no vents or anything, and the air conditioning went out. And so we were just stuck there for 12 hours a day with a superheating computer, and just masses of just the human heat in those shows can be pretty impressive. But somehow we made it. I'd say the coolest thing there, I got to give a presentation of Gears of War to the entire Hobbit cast from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's funny. It was a highlight of that year for sure. Let's see here.
Cool. More questions.
More questions. I'd like to see a complete API reference with some context, snippets of code showing what scenarios a particular class property can be useful. Is this possible?
Yes. Do you have anything you want to say on this one?
Well, actually, we saw somebody just started doing this on their own initiative, and we actually reached out to them. We think it's awesome. We want to figure out how to get that resource out to you guys. And it's something, we have our API doc tool. It's sort of a work in progress, and we're looking to improve it.
Yep. Yeah, so we have API docs. We're kind of still learning about how to do them. I mean, we'd always kind of maintained Doxygen versions of our documentation, but it was never very polished. So we spent some time trying to figure out how to get it best presented for you guys for the public release. We really wanted the docs out there and wanted them online so that you could Google search and find API reference stuff in them. But I mean, we're totally aware that it's still early days for that. Like we need to figure out the best way to, why do we see Jim Brown down there?
I don't know, Jim Brown is trying to talk to us right now.
Oh, I see.
Say hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim. Yeah, so the API docs, they need some work. And if you can put up example sites and you can teach us how to do it better, like we'll gladly accept any help that you guys are willing to help us with that. Like it'd be really appreciated because we're still learning about how that stuff works.
Yeah, especially if you guys have ideas like that, we totally would love to work with you. You know, even getting it whether it belongs on the wiki or some other thing. Like the cool thing is we can tie it in and hopefully make it part of the ecosystem so everybody has access to it, and it just makes it easier to showcase that cool stuff going on. So.
And as far as code snippets and just better examples inline, like. That's something that we've been working on already for more than a few months, since the beginning of UE4, but it's accelerating. Once we realized we were going to have public C++ API documentation like this, we realized we really need to just improve our culture of how we decorate functions and variables and making sure that those things end up looking useful in the documentation context. And ideally we'll end up it's just something we have to get better at on the engineering team, and it will just be incremental. Every build, hopefully, every time you see new docs, things will get filled in a little more, and it will just get robust. And hopefully, when we're talking about this, 6 months from now, it'll just be in way better shape. That's what I expect.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still a lot of function comments and whatnot that maybe need a...
Some of those comments are from UE1.
Yeah.
So there's some parts of UE1 still in UE4, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, that's funny. I remember when I was working on, back again, UE3, the Unreal Script compiler, and I finally found some crazy bug. And I ran to Tim so excited, like, I found a bug in your code. And he's like, I don't remember that code. Maybe there's still some Unreal bugs in there Unreal 1 bugs we haven't caught yet. So I saw a question fly by about HTML5. Just to recap on that, like it's coming in there.
Actually the 4.0 one has it in there, just not in the launcher version of the editor.
It's on the GitHub version right now, the source there.
I haven't tried it with the GitHub version myself, but my understanding is that it does work. Some people I've seen have had some success with it, but so it's still in heavy development. The platform team is working on, they're originally hoping for 4.1 we'd have a version of HTML5 available within the launcher's version of the editor. That's not going to make it, I think, at this point, but we're hoping for 4.2, the next version after, we'll have better support for HTML5. But like Ray said, if you go to GitHub, all the HTML5 stuff is there. If you download the optional .zip, unzip it into your source tree, build project files, load up Visual Studio or Xcode, you'll see the option for building HTML5 platform. Actually, I don't know if it's in Xcode yet, but it's in Visual Studio. And you can actually compile and target JavaScript. And I've seen it. I've myself deployed to a web browser at least. So
at least once it worked.
It's worked a few times, even with different programs. So
cool. But, that's a super common workflow, especially when you're working with a small team. That's often the easiest time to share builds and progress. I've done that myself. So.
But make no mistake, we are committed to it. We're going to get you guys just. If you're a subscriber, you're going to have HTML5. You're just going to get it, and we'll fully support it. There'll be no catches or anything.
Yeah. So another question I saw at Creative HD in the forums was asking, one of them is blueprints. Can you export blueprints to share with other users? And the answer is you can copy and paste them. Is that correct?
Well, you can copy and paste the file is not the ideal workflow.
But you can actually, it's still T3Ds, right? You can still copy the actual script.
You can copy, Oh, you like the clipboard copy.
Yeah.
I think that does work, but the recommended workflow if you want to share with others for now would be to use the migrate content tool, which I think is changing names. Or no, it's not changing names, it's fine. So you can right-click in Content Browser and choose migrate content, and you can move asset packages outside your project in a form that someone else can pull them back in. So that's kind of the way that you would go and give them to someone else. Of course, you can just grab the asset file and just sort of copy it yourself if you wanted to, but there's advantages to using the migrate content tool. It will figure out dependencies for you and help you make sure that all the things that you're hooked up to go with the file. We'd love feedback on that tool, actually. It came online maybe 6 months ago, so could always use more feedback there. So
let's just see a question from Turgat, I'm going to say, about plugin development, asking for documentations. Yeah, we're definitely working on some more docs, right?
Yeah, so there's some plugin docs. I think I wrote most of the existing plugin doc page. We could certainly have more. Like I said earlier, plugins really, we're not advertising it as a supported feature right now. It's something that you see we're using built-in engine plugins as a way to eat our own dog food for the system that's still in development. But as you can imagine, it's an important part of where we're going. We want you guys to be able to make things and, give them to share them with friends, build things, sell them. Of course, we want to empower that. So it's just something that we'll be working on there. Turgai said specifically he wants to plug in to load a custom asset type in a viewer. That should be possible. Like we've seen plugins that can do that before, declare their own asset types. I believe the Paper2D plugin that's in the experimental folder, which the source is available on GitHub, should show an example of custom assets declared inside a plugin, along with asset editors that can open those plugins. But yeah, we'll get more documentation. It will come naturally as plugins become more part of the key workflow that.
Yeah, and that sort of dovetails into a question, Animal Machine, about is there a plan for a big documentation drop, or is it going to be an incremental process? We're all about incremental, I think, on everything. We're looking for every bit of thing that goes in the engine. We're going to kick off documentation. There's clearly a lot of backlog there for us to catch up to. Videos, the content examples, hopefully you guys found that super useful. If you haven't dug in there, there's nothing better than a working version of what you're trying to build, right? And we'll continue to figure out a good process to just constantly be rolling those out there for you guys. Yep. And then, if you see something that you want to try to do now and you just can't get access to it, let us know, and we will happily, shuffle things around. It's the fortunate that we are somewhat flexible in our planning and prioritization there. So
I want to correct this guy. So Meridium says Extreme for Linux editor support. Okay, we have not announced Linux editor support.
Yeah, sorry, Linux deployment. That is our first.
Yes. Yeah. Porting the editor to Linux is a medium-sized project that I don't think we want to take on right yet. But
I think that one it's on our backlog, right? It's one of the first things we talk about when it's like Linux, right?
No reason it can't be done. Yeah. It's just it's not at the top of the priority stack yet, but it'd be cool. I
mean, it's easier than it has been in the past, especially with Slate, right?
Yeah.
Once you've got the runtime up and running,
Slate works on Linux right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the desktop platform parts of Slate, like windowing, docking, mouse handling, messages, all that stuff. Like that's not written for Linux yet. So there's still some work to be done there to be able to get the editor working on that platform. Right now, we're focused on making sure Mac is a first-class editor target. Like it's been a little bit behind PC up until launch, and still is. And we want to make sure that's one-to-one. We're trying to use Macs more here.
Yeah. We got an army of MacBook Pros now. We just took them all out of Best Buy.
Yep.
But that's what we found is one of the most effective ways is we actually got to use it and make it part of our workflow. Which there was a little bit of grumbling on the getting used to OS X, for example, for some diehard Windows folks, but it's pretty good, yeah. And we should call out Michael Chupka, man. That guy was a beast. He was our main guy that made Mac possible, honestly.
Yeah, really a one-man army for porting the engine from Windows to Mac, including all the runtime rendering and editor support. It's a huge project, and he just worked his butt off.
Yeah, him and Mark as well, yeah. So It's been great. Let me see. What other cool questions do we have here? They would love a full Linux workflow. All right. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, imagine the amount of time. You see here. We really like the videos on UE's YouTube channel, although I hate that Zach Parrish guy. Oh, maybe I added that part. No, Zach is, I don't know if you guys have seen, he actually has been asking on Twitter and forums, I think, of if you guys have videos and things that you'd love to hear him talk about. And hopefully, we'll pair him up with some other developers in the building. And I think we're planning to do more of these Twitch streams if they're popular and useful to you guys. But yeah, just feed us ideas and suggestions of what you'd like to see.
Are we still is there new tutorials on the way? There's some?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so Zach's just still pumping. Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah, no, he's probably talking to a camera right now.
I think we want more tutorials from other team members as well, as more domain experts for the deep dive on various systems, and C++, right? We want to do a lot more with C++ and making sure that we have tutorials about that. The
other fun thing that we talked about, we actually did this as part of the Rocket Beta back in December, was a gamified tutorial. It's an interesting way to, it was really just, this one was focused on the basics of the editor, but it was actually kind of cool. It was, the premise of a game, you're trying to get a guy across like a platformer game style. And like, oh God, he fell into the pit of spikes. Well, you got to drag a static mesh and build a bridge so you can get the coin. That's another one of those things we hopefully can resurrect and play around with. And that'd be a cool one to to collaborate with you guys in the community on if you find it useful.
Yeah, the tutorial is almost like you're using Little Big Planet or something, in that you're more in the game than in the editor, but you're using the game to help achieve the goals set out by the tutorial in the editor. So it was really cool, but it was also
Cool.
I just couldn't figure out how to get it into release.
Yeah, it's one of those things that maybe we just iterate in the public there, and that'll help us get to the useful design. I'm seeing a stream of comments about C++ tutorials. We definitely hear you, and we're working on. Actually, I sent an email last night to all our internal game programmers and said, "Hey guys, come help out. Let's speak about your experiences." So we'll have a lot more stuff coming soon for you on that.
Don't be shy about your opinions of C++ workflow. I've been reading and I see a lot of stuff out there. Some of it, there's some misinformation and there's a lot of good feedback as well. And that's something we just have to work on, making sure that, I feel like you guys kind of need to see how Unreal Engine 4 developers over the past year or more have worked with C++ and that it's not actually it's not like you're writing C++ in school or anything. It's not like you're dealing with
it's not
more
the full
esoteric
power,
that's not the esoteric parts of the language. We do you don't really need the esoteric parts of the language. You're usually using utility functions and libraries that are very high level and game centric. So I think I always call it assisted C++ because really you're writing C++, but it's very much dealing with the parts of it that are important for gameplay programmers and not getting you sucked down into the dirty depths of the language and getting you we find that while we're writing gameplay, our gameplay code for Fortnite doesn't have that stuff in it, right? It looks a lot like you'd see in a script language because it's just.
And speaking on that, one of the ones that Billy Bramers, I believe he's working on today, is kind of for those of you familiar with STL and the containers they provide. Unreal has its own sort of set of those, and so he's creating a nice mapping and to help understand if you're looking for this concept. Here it is in the Unreal language, basically. Or sorry, it's not an Unreal language. The Unreal version of C++ or whatever in our framework. So
Jeff Ferris wrote a great little getting started with C++ and Unreal guide. Hopefully you guys have seen that. It's on the documentation site, but it kind of guides you into some of the kind of the nuances of working with C++ and Unreal Engine. Because Unreal Engine it's big and sometimes it's strange, but it actually matches really well with C++. It's a very raw engine, and the raw language goes really well with our workflows, even for gameplay programming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I saw an awesome question about my beard. Unfortunately, I'm not the only person allowed to wear a beard at Epic, although someday I'll win that battle. And then just a question about our company.
I've seen your beard in a lot worse state than this. This is fine.
Yeah, actually, well, there's a camera. I figured I'd maybe shave this week. No. There's also a question about company culture here, and I would say that's one of the awesomest things is I think we're all gamers. We're all here because we love games and technology, and it's just such a rare opportunity to work with so many like-minded individuals, And
I know if we weren't busy working on this engine so much, we'd want to go home and use the engine and make something. I just can't. I've been telling people here, I can't wait to go home and actually use this thing and build something with it. And I have projects that I worked on in the beta that I want to port to the latest version, maybe make tutorials out of them. So I'm excited to have time to do that.
Well, and I know there's quite a few, and I'm one of these too. We're always, as a game developer, there's always this game I've been trying to make my whole life, and I get to various degrees of it. Yeah,
yes. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's exciting. This last weekend, I carved out a good 3 hours to just sit down with blueprints and start.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's been awesome. There's a great group of people who usually get along fairly well. But I think all the conflicts are usually because we're so passionate about no, it must be done this way. No, this way. You're crazy. This way. And you're whoa. Okay, we'll figure it out. So. Can I have a job? I don't need pay. Yeah, totally. Come on over. Nice. How are we doing? Yeah. About 5 more minutes. Yeah. So let's see. Any other cool questions?
Do we have any plans to make short films friendlier to work with in Unreal Engine 4? That's a question from Zavone.
Zavone.
Sorry, it's hard to say usernames. Oh, cool. I guess short films. You mean actually creating cinematics that you could bake down to a video, such as using the matinee.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming that's what you meant, but I guess the short version is absolutely yes. So matinee in Unreal Engine 4 is largely a transplant from Unreal Engine 3. It's a huge, complicated, deep tool that is very powerful. We used it to build all the Gears of War cinematics for all of the games, and it can do a whole lot of stuff in there. But we realized it's a little bit clunky. It was a purpose-built tool. And we've tried to make it a little bit easier to use over the years, and in fact, we have a series of matinee improvements coming. But truth be told, sequencer, sequencer is kind of where we're going to put our chips for the future, and not really.
Yeah.
Probably matinee will keep. If you use matinee now, we're not going to go and it's not going to disappear on you. We'll keep it around as long as we need to. But we'll build sequencer up alongside, and that will be kind of the future of cinematics editing in UE4. And we'll talk about more of that later. You can kind of see the direction we're going in the code, but we have a pretty exciting design for that. I mean, the team working on that, the team that owns it, would be, I'm sure, more than happy to talk about once we get back to working on it. They're still busy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, is Greg Mitchell
Greg's
there?
here.
Media sig.
Oh,
Cool.
sorry, Greg. We're not going to work on sequencer now.
What is his username?
Media sig.
Oh, okay.
Nice. He's super passionate. We've had a couple lunch conversations. Yeah. As soon as we get there, it's definitely on our near. It's at the top of our backlog. Yeah.
Sure.
How about that? Yeah.
Greg is the cinematics director for Gears of War 2 and Gears of War 3 and Judgment and, gosh, who knows what else? Unreal Tournament 3 maybe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. How long until the editor gets on Linux? X amount of time. Solve for X. I don't know.
This is Ray's call.
I mean,
We would love to have it. We love Linux.
Oh,
and,
nice. So it's all my fault.
Well, I mean, we would. It's just we
Yeah.
need. Yeah.
And then one last before we wrap up, can you make a game only using blueprints? Like, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And in cases where you're trying to do something that doesn't fit well with blueprint, let us know. We definitely, there are games entirely made in blueprints today, and yeah, there should be no reason. So.
Yep. Definitely.
Cool. So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Just to recap. So the hotfixes out there, it's a good one. You should already have it in your hands if you don't already. We released the realistic rendering. I think there was a little issue they ran into, but it's getting sorted out as we speak.
Minutes away.
Minutes away, I'm told.
Cool.
And so yeah, that'll be available to everybody. We're working on 4.1. The preview notes are up on the forum. You can go to GitHub and if be adventurous yourself.
If you're adventurous, check out 4.1.
Yeah.
Check out the unstable preview build. I wouldn't take the unstable one and merge that into your main line or anything. You might run into a roadblock. We don't know.
Yeah.
But check it out. Create a separate fork for it and experiment with the new features and give us feedback before we release 4.1. And if you find, especially if you find critical bugs or anything like that, we'll get those fixed, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out, please. And tell us what you think about this sort of
The process.
continuous release plan. I think that we want to give you guys what you want and what's most useful to you, and knowing how you feel about it will help us do the right thing there.
Yeah, exactly. This feels like the best way we can go about this, and hopefully it's valuable to you guys, and not. The last thing we want to do is like break things or disrupt it, but we'll find the right cadence for this. So, there's a ton more upgrades and content. We'll have a full release notes and upgrade notes when we actually get 4.0 out there for everybody. And by the way, I know we've been putting a ton of content on the blog, and these are actual developers in the company who are the specialists in all these things. So, I definitely recommend check it out. Honestly, we put to 5 posts a day sometimes. There's a lot of enthusiasm there.
Yeah. Keep checking the blog, and the launcher launcher pages also show most of the stuff. It's updated daily.
Yeah. And we're iterating on that, how to make that the best useful. Highlighting the useful, especially on the support and documentation side, making sure you guys see.
I think that's a great thing to highlight is that it actually this doesn't go through. We don't have a team just building. This is the actual developers that would normally be working on a AAA game here that are taking the time because they're so excited about contributing to this community.
Yeah.
They're so happy to have the engine out, and they all work so hard on this with us. If we could have them all on video sometime, that'd be awesome to see. But they want to build this stuff and get it out there too. So I think that
and we're also working on a good process of all that content going on the blog, making sure we're capturing it as a good reference moving forward. Because a lot of it is, and the wiki, it's very educational. And I know on the wiki, we really. That one's sort of an experiment. We've never really maintained a public wiki like that before, and
we do not know what we're doing with it.
But I saw already there's a ton of code snippets up there, and the community is really getting in that. So we really built that one for you guys. So help us. However we can structure it or content we can add there. We're open to feedback.
Yeah,
for
we're
sure.
still thinking. One idea I had actually was just to get a page up that showcases interesting forks of the code that we find in the community of things going on that were awesome work in progress, or other public GitHub repos that show game projects in development or plugins or interesting tools in development. We need a showcase for those, so that's something that I thought that wiki might be a fun place to maintain, and you guys can help us maintain it.
Yeah, and just a shout out, there's an IRC channel that's been pretty active. We didn't expect that one.
I know, I heard that too, yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very cool to see.
That's cool.
I know some of our devs there are in there.
If I go back to IRC, I might never get out again, so I'm not sure.
Cool. I think thank you guys very much. It's been a lot of fun. We'll have another stream, it sounds like, before the end of the month. And yeah, tell us what you like about these, what we can talk, who we can put on the camera for you. Probably some artists. Well, we did Jeremy and Matthew last time. Yeah, so we'll mix it up and yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Thanks for listening to us. Thanks for trying the product.
Yeah. Thanks for the great questions. Bye-bye.
Bye.